member of BBE as a faculty member and extension specialist in the area of drainage, agricultural drainage and water quality. He has degrees in ag engineering from 3 different places, the most recently Colorado State, where he got his PhD in ag engineering. He's been, basically, kind of the point person in the state for drainage issues, and has one of the best named extension sites, the drainage outlet. So I just love that. Anyway, so
I kind of like it too.
Without further ado, Gary.
Thank you, Sue. And thanks to the search committee for the opportunity to interview for the position. Thanks, Dean Burr, for coming out. And thanks to all of you for braving the elements, although it looks sunny out there now. I got kind of wet on my way over, but thanks for coming out. It's truly an opportunity, and I appreciate that. I was up before many of you 19 years ago when I interviewed for my position, and it's hard to believe that that much time has passed since then. But glad to have you here. To hear some of my thoughts about the department head position and about the department in general. I'd like to start, though, by asking a question. I'm an extension guy. I ask a lot of questions of folks that attend my talks. And the question I'd like to ask is, what would BBE look like if we were really successful? I'll let you ponder that for about 3 seconds. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, we are already successful. This is what we look like when we're successful. And I would agree with you. But let me just tweak that question a little bit and ask it again. And that is, what would we look like if we were even more successful than we are right now? That's a question that I'm going to return to throughout the talk. And it's a question that I'd like you to kind of hold in the back of your mind as we go through the next hour or so. So start with a little philosophy. Education and the advancement of learning is a part of any academic mission at any university. If you don't think that's true, take a look at the U of M mission statement, and I provided a URL for you there if you haven't seen it recently. I return to it time and time again for inspiration. And so learning is a fundamental part of our mission here at the U. You can look at the CFAN's mission statement and you see something very similar. And if you kind of browse down through it, and you see it's about our research, discovering, it's about sharing those discoveries in teaching, and about extending those to the community. So very, very important. Thinking about academia leads us to consideration today, anyway, of the academic department and its role at the university. And some have written and asserted that, in fact, the academic department is maybe the most important unit on campus. Dean Burr might disagree, I don't know, but I think it's a pretty important unit. Just think about it. It's where we design our curricula and offer our majors. It's where those first student-faculty interactions occur. It's our disciplinary home for many of us. And it's often those sort of first-line, those first-degree collaborations that we make as scientists occur in our department. So it's an incredibly important unit, whether it's the most important or not. It's very important. So I'm asking you to consider today, and especially in a time when our leadership is changing in the department, is what is our connective tissue in the department? What holds us together? What's the glue that keeps us all here? What is the important stuff? And we're going to be pondering this as we go through. I think many of you agree with me that faculty are the heart of the department. They're the heart of the university. They're the engine that drives all the other activity, in my view, and in the view of many. However, students are our lifeblood. Students are our lifeblood that is coursing through the veins of this learning that we spoke of earlier. So according to that U of M mission, it's very important that we have extremely strong linkages among and between our research endeavors and our teaching endeavors of all types of teaching, including extension education. And so a pipeline, or a stream, if you will, of high quality graduates, of all types of graduates, is extremely important for us in our role here in our mission on campus. If students are our lifeblood, then we need to figure out how to pursue our mission and our strategic goals with them foremost in our minds. This advancement of learning that shows up in the U of M mission statement is really a fabric that's woven from research, teaching, and outreach, the fundamental parts of the land-grant mission. If one of those threads is pulled, the fabric unravels. So they're all extremely, extremely important. Departmental success, I would assert, hinges on student success. Student success is not sufficient for departmental success, but it is necessary for departmental success. And if you want to hear some of our students talk about their successes and their connections in the department and what it means to them and the value they derive from it, I invite you to look at the new video that's just out in the last couple of days. I shortened the URL for you there, but you can also find it on our website. Look at it. It's pretty incredible. Our students are getting a lot out of what we do here. You know, before we look ahead, I think it's pretty important to maybe glance backwards first. And in the time since we've merged as two departments, becoming one, about 10 years or so, I think we've had a lot of growth, an incredible amount of growth. And I've listed a few areas. We could add to this list easily, but there are a few areas that we've grown here, and I want to provide just a couple of snapshots of some of that growth before we look ahead. Student enrollment in our department has really climbed over the years. Now, I know some of that's an artifact of coming together of two programs, but not all of it, certainly not all of it. And in gold here, you see our engineering undergraduates, and in maroon, you see our SSM undergraduates. And I might not have the numbers exactly right. The important thing here is to look at the trend and how we've really experienced a lot of growth here over the last few years. Some data that Ulrika was kind enough to provide just shows the breakdown of our engineering students, bioproducts engineering, environment and ecological engineering, and food engineering. Nice trends there as well. Where does that enrollment fit in College of Science and Engineering? The dashed line there sort of shows, kind of marks with a hash mark our enrollment. And we see that we're among a group of smaller programs in that college, certainly not the smallest by any means. In CFANS, if we look at our SSM and pre-BBE students, again, we're in a strong group. We're not the smallest program. There certainly are some large programs. If we were to sort of artificially add on our engineering students here and consider them as one student body, even though it's a little bit of apples and oranges because they matriculate through CSE. Anyway, we would become one of the largest students on campus, or largest departments on campus. This is another measure of some pretty amazing growth. The number of students we teach has gone up significantly over the last 10 years or so. So the total student credit hours read to the left here, we're approaching the 10,000 mark, which is pretty significant. The student credit hours per FTE teaching faculty is read to the right. And again, some dramatic increases there as well. Now we know that our online education, our online instruction plays a big role there. I think that makes up about 2,000 or so of those student credit hours. I might have that wrong. I think it's close to that. And these numbers are extremely strong if you look across our College of CFANS to look at how we're doing among our peer programs in the college anyway. Very strong numbers. You could also look at grants as a measure of our growth over the last few years, and these have certainly increased nicely. Incidentally, as we look at these numbers, I think about 5 million or so of this is associated with the SARE program. So that's a lot of growth. Time for cruise control, right? Wrong. I would suggest that it's not the time to set the cruise control. It's time to leverage that growth and do some additional things, do some more things. We need to look at maybe some of our challenges, some of the opportunities that are out there, and leverage that growth toward those things. And I've made sort of a quick and short list of some of those opportunities that I see, and we could flesh this out and have a much, much longer list here if we worked on it together. But we know our base funding is a challenge. This is our base level funding that pays our salaries, that really is what we start with. And this is really not keeping up with inflation. And so that's a big challenge for us. Incidentally, the extension component of that base funding has probably taken the biggest hit over the years. Our faculty diversity. You know, anecdotally, I don't have the real numbers, but I think we're about 50-50 male-female as an undergraduate student body. So wouldn't it be great if our faculty could at least begin to reflect more what our undergraduate student population looks like. Graduate student enrollment, I'm the DGS, so you can blame me, but I haven't seen the numbers really increase dramatically in terms of our grad student enrollment over the years. It's strong, but I think it could be stronger. It was heartening to see some of our capstone, senior capstone teams approach an international project for their design this year. What if, however, we were able to embed international opportunities into our curricula so that all students would get those kinds of experiences? Those are the kinds of international experiences that the U would really love to see in every major across campus. How well engaged are we with our alumni? I'm looking at you, Marley. I know you do a great job, and we do connect with them, but I think maybe perhaps there's more we could do and explore that some more. What is our status in College of Science and Engineering? Well, you know, I've been here 19 years. Some of you have been here a few more years. And I've heard you talk about our relationship with CSC the whole time I've been here, and often not in the best of terms. And so I think that's an opportunity for us, especially with a new dean now over there, something we'll need to look at. Again, as I look around, you know, there might be a few retirements on the horizon in our department. Do we have a plan for those retirements? Online education, I alluded to this earlier, showing some of the measures of growth, is a real game changer, and it's an opportunity for us, and it's one there for the taking, and I think we've already got a good start. However, a challenge is we've heard about potentially the changing of the LE themes, and that's going to be an issue for us as we look at what some of those courses are doing. I've heard many of you also talk about the quality and the capacity of our laboratories, and I'm not offering a solution right here, but just throwing it out there as a challenge for us as we move ahead, as our faculty grow, as we need more space to do the things that we're doing. ICR dollars, again, a challenge for us. We could have a long conversation about that. And what about those national rankings? You've seen them, U.S. News and World Report, Iowa State University, Biosystems and Ag Engineering, #1, Purdue, #2. Are they important? Do we need to be thinking more about those? Are they an opportunity for us? I know those schools certainly tout those rankings and use them heavily. Well, we've seen that we've had some pretty significant growth, and I just provided a glimpse at some of that growth. There's much more there. And hopefully I've offered enough examples to suggest that there's some challenges and some opportunities out there for us to address as well. So what are we going to do? Well, remember, we're not going to set cruise control. We're going to look at these challenges and opportunities, and a strategic plan would help. But hey, we have one of those. We developed a strategic plan in 2008. I've given you a short URL, so it's really easy for you to go and find it. You can also find it on our webpage. 2008, it's 10 pages. Most of you, many of you in the room, including myself, worked on this a number of years ago. And it's a pretty solid plan. I don't know when the last time you looked at it was, but it's got a very well-articulated mission and vision statement. And then that plan is sort of structured around a set of overarching goals. I think there are about 6 of them. And then some program priorities, the areas in which we work. There's some priorities there. And then the ways in which we work in terms of the organizational priorities. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. I'm not going to do a deep dive into the strategic plan, although a couple of people asked me to do that, but I said no. But what I thought I'd do is at least put up these overarching goals, because I think these are really good and really important, and I've highlighted a couple of words in each one. Great research and teaching facilities, increased student enrollment at all levels, robust involvement with stakeholders. We're going to be leaders in the areas that we work in. We're going to have a strong departmental culture, and we're going to cultivate great relationships externally. This is a great set of goals. This is a fantastic set of goals. So at a time when the leadership is changing in the department, is it not a perfect time to take stock of these goals and say, well, what progress have we made in 10 years' time? almost 10 years' time now. And what is left to do? What's still on the table? And are there some goals now that need to be added to the list? So that's why I provide these. It's a starting point for that conversation. Now, I know all of you have this plan on your desks in a special place, but it might have been perhaps a week or two since you've looked at it. I fully understand that. So I've saved you the trouble of doing that, at least for today. And what I did was I took that plan and I shredded it. Okay, I didn't shred it in the paper shredder down the hall. I put it in the word blender and spit it out and generated this word cloud of our strategic plan. And there are some great themes that show up in here. I'm really heartened to see graduate and undergraduate students showing up perhaps larger than anything else here. And incidentally, a word cloud, the larger words have occurred more frequently in that document, and that's how that works. Research, teaching, faculty, extension. There's some good stuff here and some really important themes. And so I'm encouraged that we have a lot to work with in the plan that we have, and it'll be a great springboard for working into the future. If we try to look at our vision and maybe reimagine our vision, it's important that it be a shared vision. It has to be a shared vision. It can't be Gary Sand's vision. It's got to be a vision that we all buy into. What are our core values, and how do those values and that mission connect to CFANS, and how does it connect to the university in general? And again, what's the connective tissue amongst us all is very important. Have we become, in that 8 years since that strategic plan, are we greater than the sum of our parts at this point or not? What would we look like if we were even more successful than we are today? I come back to that fundamental question. So we are a diverse group. There's no doubt about that. We were 2 diverse programs before we ever merged. Really diverse. And now it's diverse on steroids. So I wanted to try to get my head around all the areas we work in, and I went to all of your faculty pages, all of them. And let me tell you, some of them need a little work, and I'm in the same club. It needs a little work. But I took all of your interest statements, and what do you think I did? I put them into my word blender. And this is what came out. I was looking for some common themes among the areas we work in, and I see engineering, water, environment. Wait, I'm a little biased looking at that. Of course, water shows up. Lignin, quality, systems, applications, materials. There are lots of ways that we connect. There is a lot of connective tissue in the work that we do. Not seeing your buzzwords show up in here, you probably need to work on your statement on the web. Well, all this talk about the department and the faculty, our students are pretty great too. And I think this is a shot, you probably took it, Marley. This is a shot from this year's commencement. And when was the last time that you looked at the list of employers and positions that have been offered to our students as they graduate? It's a pretty impressive list. It goes back to 2006 or something, I think is what I saw. And if you throw all those into the blender, you come up with this. Make no mistake about it, engineering is front and center. Think about this pipeline of high-quality graduates that I alluded to earlier. Engineering is a really, really major part of that. So we've got to get the students in there too. I'm going to take just a minute to reflect inward for a couple of slides. I think you deserve to know a little bit more about the guy who's standing here saying he wants to be your next department head, okay? So allow me to do that, if you will, please. I'm not a native of Minnesota. You probably know that just from the way I talk. I don't know what I sound like anymore. But I'm a native of Delaware. Some would spell that W-H-E-R-E, Delaware. I'm an East Coaster. And here's the couple that got it all started for me, Mom and Dad. This is their American Gothic moment out in the garden. But Dad's a Midwesterner. He's from Wisconsin. He graduated from chemical engineering at UW. So the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. And I might not be a native of Minnesota, but I'm right at home in the state of hockey. I grew up playing hockey in high school, a little bit in college, and I've really enjoyed that part of living and working in Minnesota. My wife and I have 2 beautiful grown children, And we're almost 1 year into grandparenthood at this point, and so I highly recommend it. It's been a lot of fun. And those of you who know me well know that I'm also kind of passionate about coffee. I'm kind of a coffee geek. I roast my own coffee beans, and this is a shot of me in the highlands of Sumatra, kind of taking a coffee tasting 101 class with an international expert there. And believe me, it looks a lot easier than it is. It's very challenging. Did you know, by the way, that coffee has about twice the number of flavor-producing compounds as wine? Think about it. Well, enough of the fun stuff. Oh, sorry. That was totally accidental that time. Thanks for killing the mood there, Pat. So as Sue mentioned, degrees from 3 universities and a number of other positions around the U.S. Starting at the University of Delaware, then the University of Kentucky, where I met Bruce Wilson. So we go back to the 80s there, and I've been bugging him ever since and trying to learn from him. But put those experiences together with 3 other land grants where I've had positions, make six land grants where I've got some experience. And I think the significant thing about that is that I've seen a mission statement that's very similar to ours, biosystems engineering, unfold in 6 different ways at 6 different land-grant universities. And so that sort of diversity of viewpoints, I think, will be helpful going forward as I think about perhaps leading this department. Throw in a few years of consulting engineering there in Nebraska. And the other thing my career path has done for me is allow me to apply my discipline of land and water engineering all across the U.S. and see some really different and interesting problems. And so that's been great. Among those 6 land grants, I should also mention down in Georgia, one of them was an 1890 school. So that was a really interesting experience as well. Internationally, I've also been very fortunate to have some really interesting international experiences. Probably the most of my experiences in Indonesia, starting in the 80s, where I was working on developing agricultural engineering curricula at what was the equivalent of land-grant universities, but much younger than our land grants in the US. And I returned to Indonesia still up through today, teaching workshops, working with communities, doing different things there. And then more recently in France, in southern France, I really was there for the work, I swear it. But we worked with, I worked with farmers and agricultural cooperatives, working on water management and water quality problems very similar to those that we face in the Midwest. So a long way away from home, but very similar problems. That's been very rewarding work. And the reason I bring up the international experience is that any of you who have worked in an international setting know to be successful there, you really have to learn the art of communication, of listening, of being open to multiple and alternative viewpoints. I didn't say alternative facts. It's really, sorry, I couldn't resist. And you can't be successful working internationally without those kinds of qualities. And I bring those with me to my profession and to my work every day. 19 years at the University of Minnesota, that's my word cloud. And the last word cloud I'm going to show you today, I'll just tell you that right now, but you can kind of see, as Sue mentioned, drainage, water management, water quality is what I work on throughout Minnesota, throughout the upper Midwest, and other countries as well. This work has been extremely rewarding. Some of you know, being an extension engineer or being an extension in general, it kind of puts you at the front lines and lets you work with the people who are making the decisions right there on the land to protect soil, water, and soil and water resources. So it's been incredibly rewarding. It's allowed me to connect from individuals to agencies, organizations, institutions throughout the country, throughout the state, and throughout the world. And making those kinds of connections is important to the work, but also important to how I do my work. Well, when I'm not running around the state and running around the Midwest, you might find me behind the curtain of an online course. This is a course that's 3 semesters old now that I designed. I don't know if Chris is in the room, Chris Lenart, but he's my co-instructor. We've got about 100 students now per semester and growing. And I'll tell you, I really drank the online Kool-Aid a couple of years ago. I blame David for that. but I should probably maybe blame Sri for that too. But I have seen how powerful this medium can be. And we're going to talk more about this, but this has been an unbelievable experience. Now, this is a non-majors course. It's open to students from all across the university. And I've got nursing students and languages students, and exposing them to these really important concepts about water and the environment. And it's been incredibly rewarding as an instructor, and I think rewarding for the students as well. I think it's going to be a game changer. Another thing I've got coming up on the horizon, and then I'll stop talking about me, is I'm going to be leading a global seminar in January, taking students to Indonesia and Bali. And the whole idea is to look at the environment, look at the human connection with the environment, and look at how we think about the environment in general, focusing on water specifically. Well, thinking about me a little bit and thinking about the position in the department, it kind of helps me transition into the idea of leadership. And as I think about leading and the leadership that I've done, and as I think about leading the department potentially, the analogy that works for me is the conductor of an orchestra. Think about it. Is there any clear an example of a leader where the results are immediate? Think about it some more. You as the individual, you're worried about your piece, your part, and making it as good as possible. You can't afford to be wondering what the French horns are doing over here or the clarinets are doing over there. You got to make your piece as good as it can be. But it's up to the conductor to see the big picture and to unite all the parts and to inspire the whole group to become something greater. And that's an analogy that I think works for me. And so my style, of course, is first going to be to listen. The conductor has to listen. But more important than listening is communication all the way around. Is fundamental to how I lead. I would lead by example and encouragement with some persistence in there. And I can think of a few things that I've accomplished over the last few years that I might not have gotten done had it not been for the encouragement of the guy in the back row there, Sri, who's also persistent, as many of you know. But thanks for that, Sri. I thank you for almost all of those things. You got to encourage participation by everyone. Everyone's got to be part of the picture. And I would stay focused on the big picture. And when I do hear that disharmony or see that dysfunction, that's a time when someone needs some help. And as a department head, I'm going to be there with that help. We're going to build on strengths. Efforts and excellence are going to be rewarded, of course. And there's plenty that I don't know. And I'll be asking lots of questions and listening for those answers. You've got to be open to learning in a leadership role. And I think I'm accessible and approachable. Ask the graduate students in my graduate student as Director of Grad Studies, those that are in my courses. It's even more important, I think, as department head. A positive attitude is contagious, and I certainly would bring that to my leadership style. Everyone is respected, and I'll be seeking your buy-in on everything that we do. It's very important that we all buy into everything to the greatest extent possible. And then let's not also forget that leading is about creating more leaders. It's not about creating followers. Well, that's part of our mission. Well, I think it's a reasonable question to ask, does Sands even know what a department head does? What is his idea of, what happens, behind those smoky glass doors? And I started to go with this. Now, I look at Sue here, and I look at Sri, and I probably don't have the percentages right, and I might not have every category on there of department head modes of operation here, but that's kind of what got me started. I think the department head's job is about supporting all of you in your work. And if I were to boil it down to the simplest form, I think that's what it is. It's about helping all of you be successful. I'm not a Minnesotan. I'm not as humble as you guys. I have no problem bragging on your accomplishments and all your fine work. I'm from the East Coast. I can say that stuff. As I mentioned, the conductor's got to have eyes on the big picture, but I'll also keep you accountable to our mission and goals. Those exist, and they're important that we pay attention to those. I know the department head is the face of the department most of the time, and so you sort of got to be ready for that 24/7, and an advocate of the department in the colleges that we are most directly connected with, but all across the university and beyond, of course. And the buck stops at the department head's desk in terms of quality of our products, all kinds of products. My commitment to success, as I alluded to earlier, is about helping you be successful. I think you come first. We can't be successful as a group unless we're successful as individuals. So it starts there as I commit to helping you be successful. Our younger faculty, their potential, their success has to be maximized. It's not just about getting people promoted. Of course, we want to get people promoted. But more importantly than that, it's about trajectory. If you launch without the right trajectory, you're not going to hit the target that you intended to hit. So you may reach promotion, but you might not get to that ultimate goal. So maximizing their success is part of my commitment to success. Got to be a problem solver. I know this. And I think the day that people stop walking in with problems would be the day that I'm not a leader anymore. So you have to be ready to solve problems. I waited probably 16 years before I took my semester leave. And after I finished with it, I thought, how dumb am I to have given up all those opportunities? It was so rewarding. And so I'm going to be pushing hard on that. I know some of you are good with those, and others perhaps need more encouragement. We'll hire the best, of course, and we're going to increase our collaboration and partnerships, which are already very strong, but we're going to do that one action at a time. That's what it's going to take. Above all, of course, we want to be balanced. We want to be headed towards our mission, and we want to balance all of our endeavors: teaching, research, outreach, students, and faculty. So I was asked to look ahead a few years and describe where I would see the department in 5 years, I think was mentioned. It's kind of hard for me to think about a finite number of years like that. I think it is important to say that it's about shared goals. It doesn't matter what I put up here. If it's not something that we all buy into and have value for, it's not going to happen. But if I had a crystal ball and if I had some magical powers, these are some of the things I think that I would like to see in 5 years. I mentioned our young faculty, and if I did my math right, we could have 7 new associate professors in that amount of time. Counting the ones that we're searching for right now in those search processes, that might be seven new people there. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to do what we're already doing. We're already mentoring them. I think we can even go further and do more there. As department head, I would make the rounds. I would start with our young faculty. I'm going to be coming to your offices. I already come to your office, but I'm going to keep coming to your office, and I'm going to ask you what's working, what's not working. Are there obstacles that I can help maybe push out of the way? I would love to see our students more engaged in our professional societies. Now, there is some engagement, but I think it could be even greater. I go to national meetings. I see students from all over the country competing in paper competitions and design competitions, and I would like to see more of that. And I think we can achieve more of that. I already mentioned CSE. How are we going to work on that connection with the College of Science and Engineering? It's going to be FaceTime. It's going to be exploring the connections that you already have with the college and on from there. I will be working heavily I anticipate, with our advisory council on how can we increase the kinds of connections we have externally in private industry. I've heard there was a panel of past presidents of the U not too long ago, and they all spoke and gave their thoughts about where they saw the university going. And that came up time and time again, connections to private industry. Some of you may recall we had the new dean from CSC over to visit not too long ago, and that was one of the themes that he kind of hit on, was connections to private industry. And I know there's a lot of angst, we're a public organization and we need to be objective and all of that, but it's a connection I think we need to think more and more carefully about. Everyone's got to know our name. We've got to continue to increase our foundation support. I know we've got one faculty position now supported by the foundation, and I think we've got the makings of another one Perhaps we're almost there, and so we need to keep our foot on the gas pedal there as well. Those ICR dollars, I know this is a challenge in the college in general. We heard Greg Cuomo talk about this at the faculty, at the college spring assembly a couple days ago. It is a challenge for the college. I don't look at ICR dollars as an immovable object. I look at them as something that we can work with. It is one of those revenue streams that we have some control over, but we're kind of a haves and have-nots as we look across the department. Some have been very successful at bringing in those dollars, others not so much. Can we spread some of that success over a greater number of faculty? I think that's something that we could work on over the next few years. I've already alluded to my thoughts on online education. I think it's a game changer. I know the online format is not ideal for every course. Certainly it is not, and you're going to give me lots of examples of that, I'm sure. However, I think it is it's a new way to think about every course we're teaching in terms of what we do when we're face-to-face with our students. If you're up here like this, I'm going to challenge you that there's probably a better way to do whatever it is you're doing, okay? So I think that's the value of online education, and there's an opportunity there that is there for the taking if we're willing to pursue it more. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't note that we have an accreditation coming up in 2019. I think I have the year right there, and that's right around the corner. In fact, we need to, if we haven't already, we need to start preparing for that. So if you're asking me about 5 years, that's sort of my short list. It's not so short, actually, but anyways, those are some of the things that I could identify. With that, I would like to close by asking you the same question that I asked when I started, and that is, what would BBE look like if we were even more successful than we are right now? That's a question that I have on my mind. That's a question that I'm going to be coming around to ask all of you if I'm fortunate enough to be offered this position. Thank you. And if it's a hard question, I'll probably just change the question. So, Simon?
Gary, thank you. So 3 things from your presentation stuck in my mind, at least. One, being a French horn player in the Minnesota Orchestra. I won't ask you about that. We're not in the department. You also talked about draining the swamp, but actually the trumpet's doing that. I think very well. And the third thing, which really stood out, was engineering in your word blender. So my question would be, what are the prerequisites for an expanding and evolving engineering department from your point of view as a conductor?
The prerequisite is the question, yes. The first 2 I'm going to consider to be just editorial, and I won't repeat those. I'm also a French horn player, I was, so we have something in common. But the question was, what are the prerequisites for an expanding engineering program or department? Did you say department or program?
Either way. You actually said department. You said at least the word engineering came out of your blender, in a very
Yes.
So I assume that we are going to be focused upon that under your leadership. Am I correct?
And let's remember that word cloud came from the employers and the positions that our students have received since 2006. And so my point there was to say that a very prominent feature in this pipeline of high-quality graduates is engineering. And so that's a very important part of what we do. So if you talk about an expanding program or department, I think that would be different to talk about department versus program. If we're talking about expanding program, I think we're thinking about perhaps other areas of emphasis. Perhaps we're talking about expanding enrollments in certain ways, and those are things that would be interesting to talk about. You know, we have the 3 sub-emphases now in our engineering program, and I think food engineering is the one that is trailing the other 2 in terms of numbers. That's something to talk about, and maybe an opportunity for expanding the undergraduate program in engineering. So I'll leave it there for that. So the question is, the observation that I talked about expanding industry support, and the question is which industry would be maybe ripe for doing that? I think that's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that question. And I think it should be asked in the plural, what industries? And I think what I did say is that I'm going to be working with our advisory council. We're going to be exploring that and see where our existing connections are. Then we go around and start looking at where are your connections in industry, and that's kind of the universe that we start with. And we look at where those connections are strongest and what type of connections we have, and then we build from there. I know my world and where my connections are. I don't know what the universe looks like in terms of all of your connections. You have a follow-up?
Just to follow up, the industry that you service, I mean, do they have big pockets to put in $1 million towards the endowed chair or towards a building or what have you? And what I'm saying is, do they have the money?
Well, that's another question, is what are those industry partners, and do they have deep pockets? I think that's another question altogether. And I think there are lots of reasons to connect externally, and money is certainly one of them. But part of that, taking stock of what our connections are, has got to be that question of, what are the resources out there? And I think you have to be ready to explore, what's the win-win? Where do they win? Where do they gain advantage by connecting with us in whatever way we ask them to connect? So I know where you're going, and we do need to connect because of the dollars, and so that is something we need to look at.
One of the metrics of success of a department is placement of the undergraduates and graduates. Once they graduate, where are they placed, how many are placed, and so on. So for them to do well, even to be placed in the first place, they have to be trained in the lab or wherever, the practical aspects of it. That requires funding and also internships and so on. All these things require, once again, funding and connections with the industry. So do you think that part of it is the duty of the head of the department? If you do think so, what would you do?
These questions are long, so they're challenging to repeat. But so if I could rephrase, the question is then, to produce these high-quality graduates, it means high-quality experiences while they're here, which takes resources, financial resources, and other resources to pull that off. Is that the department head's job to look at those resources, and what are my thoughts there? Did I summarize that? Well, you're right. It does take resources to have those kinds of outputs and outcomes. We're already being, I think, quite creative in the way we put resources together. I mentioned the challenge of our base budget, and our instructional funding as well is challenging to start adding on laboratory experiences, experiential learning, and so forth. It takes resources to do that. So we have to be very creative with where we look for resources. The online instruction that we've done in the last few years has given us a little sliver of additional resources to be able to put toward student learning. And so we have to be creative. And yes, I think it is a department head's role to see the bigger picture and figure out how we can improve the experience of students while here, and not to sit pat on whatever we've got. Very much so, a department head's role. Follow up?
What I wanted to say is the employment of the undergraduates and graduates, where they are placed and how they are placed, and what can you do towards that?
Well, where are our students placed, and what kinds of positions are they offered, and so forth. And I think we all have a role there, and certainly a department has a role too. I think our connections externally are going to be a big part of that. And I've got some ideas that I'd love to talk more about how we can increase those connections, get those external players involved in our undergraduate program and get them involved. So it's, you know, the connections we make and the partnerships we have are going to be key. Pat?
Well, in terms of the two programs, if you will, the engineering, I mean, I think it's pretty clear how successful that's been and how important it is. I also anticipate it's pretty demanding to kind of keep on top of it. But on the other side, we have an SSM program that's relatively new, I think probably undervalued. Its visibility still isn't what it could be, and certainly the program itself isn't what it could be or should be. How, one, do you balance those two programs, and secondarily, perhaps spend some additional resources and time building it up to maybe where it should be today or in the future?
So the question is about our SSM program, Sustainability Systems Management, and how we might grow that. It is a new program. Right now it captures some of those emphasis areas that we had previously, but now they're under a new umbrella of SSM. And what do we have? I don't know. What are the numbers I put up there? What is our enrollment there, Marley? Is it, anyway, it's smaller, 60 or so compared to the engineering. So I think it needs to grow. To be balanced, I don't think it needs to be balanced necessarily in terms of student numbers, but certainly our efforts going into those two need to be balanced. And you know, we don't reduce the effort to that just because, you know, we have more students in the other one. So we've got to look at both. It's a new program. It's not as, you know, it needs to be better known. And so we need to get the name out there and spread the word. In lots of ways, I think we could work on doing that, but it's going to take, you know, it's going to take the department head, it's going to take a number of us to kind of market it and get it out there and get the, you know, increase the visibility. There are a lot of ways we can do that, Pat, some of which don't require a ton of money. You know, social media is going to be one that can help us perhaps move up the ladder a little bit in terms of visibility. So I think there are some ways to do that. I don't know what's been done so far. I know it's a very new major, and so I'm really proud that it's there and it's existing and it's got a student base right now. But we'll need to look at what we're doing to push the visibility up. Bo?
In the past several years, our department funding, increased several times, as shown in your slide. But on the other hand, our graduate population, remains to be very small. So when you become a department head, you will have more resources and more power to lead some changes. Do you want? I want to know what kind of changes you want to put on this aspect to increase our graduate enrollment.
So the question is about how we increase our graduate enrollment. I don't think I said it was small. Maybe that's your thoughts there. It could certainly be larger. With an increase in funding that I showed, if our number of graduate students is staying flat, then that's an obvious question, is why is that not increasing? And all of you know, all of you who are doing research know that we're all sort of walking that line between, do I fund another student or do I fund another postdoc? You know, the projects come in and they have a 2-year turnaround time, deliverables in 2 years, 3 years. You got to get the work done right now. It starts making postdocs and researchers look very attractive. And so I think we're all in that boat of trying to determine where we put funds on graduate students and where we put funds on researchers. And it's a very challenging decision to make. I think part of the answer is that we do have to spend some of those funds on graduate students rather than researchers. I'm fairly new, sort of getting my head into the thinking about the department here. I haven't, again, looked behind the veil of the department head. I don't know all the numbers that are there, and I don't know the number of researchers we have compared to the number of graduate students. But I think that's something that I would challenge all faculty and all who are funding research here to think about is our mission of graduate education and the short-term versus the long-term gains. It's a hard question, but it's one we all need to think carefully about. And there's a world out there. There are constraints that we're all working in. Again, these short turnaround projects. We all have to kind of work in that environment. And so I know how hard it is. We've just got to get our heads together and figure out how we can get more graduate students trained. Yeah, Ara.
So you stressed the importance of having a strong connection with CSE, and I'm not sure what kind of connection you have right now, and what do you foresee, and how do you want it to, how do you think it will affect our research or like having something different from what we're doing right now?
Question is about our connection with College of Science and Engineering. And the questioner is not sure what those connections are, but how can those be improved? As I mentioned in my talk, I've heard all of you talk about those connections and not in a favorable light most of the time. And so I just operating on the assumption that that connection can be improved. And again, with the new dean, I think we have a big opportunity there. But it's going to start with our one-on-one connections, one-on-one connections. I know that in my area of work, I look at John Niebuhr and Bruce Wilson and Chuck, and those guys have connections to CSE that I don't have, and I know all of you probably have some of those connections. We need to explore those. But I think a stronger connection will help that pool of undergraduate students who are looking for a major. Better visibility there, stronger connection is going to help them maybe see our program and see our niche within the pool of engineering programs. So there's one way I think that will benefit from a stronger connection. Right now, if you go to the CSE webpage, we're listed under programs, and then we show up as an affiliate program because we're administered also through CFANS. And so you don't have to do much digging there to see that, oh, that program is different. And, I think that carries a message along with it, and maybe not the most positive message. Sue?
You had mentioned your interest in increasing international opportunities for your majors. And I'm curious if you want to tell us just a little bit more of your thoughts, since LAC courses are for, kind of a broader group. What are your thoughts for actually taking some of, the international stuff into your majors and in your curriculum?
Thanks, Sue. The question is, what are my thoughts about bringing more of the international perspective or activities into the majors? And that's exactly what I suggested that we think about doing. And having students go through a capstone design and work on an international problem, thanks to Walter back here, I think, probably came from him. That is an embedded experience, but it was only available to that group of students who worked on that problem. But that is a great example of an embedded experience where, as part of their requirements for completing their degree, they got that international exposure. So much the better if they'd been able to. I don't think they traveled as part of that. But the U of M loves to see those embedded kinds of experiences. So a student doesn't have to go out and do a semester abroad or a global seminar abroad that adds on to somehow the time and requirements that they already face to complete their degree. So I would love to see, the first thought I had is to do more of what we saw one of our capstone groups do. In fact, I have a place in Indonesia that I would love to take students who want to travel and explore a problem in the semester preceding their, maybe over the winter term, in the semester preceding their capstone design, and then, again, make that part of their design problem. I was at another university. I saw how very creatively they applied for a higher education grant, a challenge grant, and they were able to connect with a partner university in the Netherlands. I think it was Wageningen. And they were able to connect student design groups from the two universities. They had teleconferences, video conferences with each other. They each traveled one time to the other's institution, and they worked on a capstone project together as part of their senior year. There are lots of ways I think we could do it. And it'd be fun to do, and I think the students would benefit from it.
Any other questions for Gary? Not? Thanks a lot.
Thank you.